Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chris Macpherson Show, your home of black and white opinions on your sporting landscape. No greys here. We're looking forward to delivering you another huge episode across the sporting world. Of course, you can keep up to date with us during the week by staying tuned to our social media channels at the Chris Mac Show, or subscribing to us on your favourite podcast platforms, and make sure to hit the bells on those platforms to keep up to date and get an alert when we come to you each week. Well, let's get it underway. Let's not waste any time. No faffing about. We're going to welcome in Brody Burrows from the Third Man Up podcast, and let's head around the grounds. Rhodes, welcome. Good to have you on the show again, mate. Good to see you've recovered from your brutal maiming in country footy.
Yeah, it was. I've got a hard ball for the first time in my life, Chris, and look what happened. Ended up with a dislocated jaw, and I got it back into place. Went down to the local hospital, and they tried to pop it back in, and after 5 hours, they eventually got there.
Mate, I've said for a long time, hardball gets are overrated as a actual executor. Great to watch, but yeah, I don't recommend doing them yourself.
Absolutely not. And had the old man umpiring on this one, and she was all play on, nothing to see here. And apparently, I was lucky not to be panged holding the ball for it. So, got to love that in country footy. No
favours for anyone, mate. It's a brutal realm, the country footy. Somewhere else that's a brutal realm is the UFC Octagon. But it's going all right at the moment. For the first time in history, we have two current world champions. Jack Della Madalena got it done, mate.
Couldn't believe it, mate. I watched this. It was on Mother's Day, and I got up nice and early, gave the wife breakfast in bed, best Mother's Day present in the world, just so I could have 3 hours and watch this UFC card. And I got there and got it, and boy, did JDM deliver in this one. Real outsider, very similar to what Volt was when he came up against Max Holloway and got that 5-round decision against Max. And look, JDM came in, and everyone's talking about his striking. Was the game plan of Bilal, was it really up to scratch? I think not enough credit is going to his takedown defense in this one. I mean, Bilal started shooting. As soon as he realised he was in trouble in that second round, he started shooting a lot. And we've never seen anyone be able to handle his takedowns like that. And it was unbelievable. And yes, he pieced him apart on his feet, but after 5 rounds, to still be able to defend takedowns and not just get sucked into a mat game, I mean, it was an outstanding performance. And we heard Dana White after saying, you saved the division. So I can't wait to see the next steps and what JDM, where he goes from here.
Yeah, I certainly can't wait to see what that looks like for him. It's huge, as I said, for the first time. And, we've been a constant presence in UFC, the Aussies, but now to have two titles belonging under the Boxing Kangaroo, under the Southern Cross and the Union Jack there is wonderful to see. We look forward to bringing some more in-depth coverage of the incoming weeks, bros, with you. Let's switch tacks a little bit now. Let's go over to the basketball. And there's been some breaking news earlier this week, which, look, trade news in the NBA isn't a whole lot of, it's nothing breaking. It's every week, especially this time of year, as we know. But the Greek for Giannis has actually indicated, for the first time since he was drafted in 2013, he's been Bucks and nothing else. He's indicated an openness and a willingness to explore avenues and opportunities outside of Milwaukee. This is big. He's one of the top players in the league, right?
Yeah, he is the Greek freak, not just what he brings on the court, but we know what a big brand he has. And European basketball at the moment is going, from strength to strength. Look at Luka, and I think the Lakers were very, very smart. They've now got a face in when LeBron obviously eventually retires. Could be 5 years down the track the way he's going. But look, Greek freak's going to bring so much on and off the court to whatever franchise, but he's going to be going to a big-name team if he is going to be leaving Milwaukee. We know that. And which one? I mean, there's been a lot of speak about my Knicks, who are currently 3-1 up in the series, who are keen to get him on the court, and he'd fit that franchise so well. We know, obviously backed by so many stars. But at the same time, where could he go and where would he fit on the floor? And it's just going to completely blow open this trade period if it does happen.
It certainly is. We know Milwaukee are going to go through a rebuild, especially with the Lillard injury. And yeah, look, it's come out and it's been projected that he'd only be interested in big cities. Obviously, there's the commercial opportunity, not just the on-court opportunity. And to your point, that leans to New York, LA franchises, maybe Miami, Houston, San Antonio. Outside that, I don't see that there's any markets that are big enough. Even Houston and San Antonio, I question. Miami, they're my side, mate, and they're not. They haven't done that well this year. I know they made a bit of a run and got into the playoffs, but they're in a bit of a shake-up time as well. It's going to be interesting, as you say, if this piece falls early, and it does fall, I mean, he may end up staying at Milwaukee, whether he wants to stay around for that rebuild. It's going to set apart, some real moving pieces. But again, maybe the Clippers make a play for him again. I don't know how he fits in there. It's going to be interesting times at this trade period.
Yeah, Clippers would love to have someone like Giannis come in, not only for his on-court dominance, but I think he'll really bring back that rivalry. When the Clippers are flying, and even if the Lakers aren't, it gives more attention to the Clippers, which increases that LA rivalry just exponentially. And I'd love to see him just move to, I'd love him to go to San Antonio. Him and Wemby together. I mean, the storylines write themselves. Two aliens, two freaks of nature running the court, controlling the offense and the defense. We know Wemby super, super powerful on the offensive end, but what he does defensively is, for someone so young, hasn't really been seen before. So, look, I'd love to see him to go to the Spurs. I don't see it happening, like you said. I do see it maybe going to a New York, to a Miami. I think that could be wide open now too. So, yeah, definitely a big watch on the Greek Freak.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be a big watch. And while we're talking Greeks and basketball, it's been announced this week, closer to home, Broads, that Panathinaikos and Partizan from Serbia will be coming out to take on the 36ers, your local side in the NBL. On my side, the Sydney Kings, in a pre-season tournament called the Pavlos Giankopoulos Tournament, which is a great look. It might sound a little bit weird to people, but these are two of the big sides in Europe. Them coming out here just is a further tick in the box. We know the NBA are sending out the New Orleans Pelicans. This is just a further tick in the box of the, the bona fide credentials of the NBL becoming a real top tier league in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see this a lot in football or soccer, depending on sort of which code you follow. They have these warm-up tournaments and they play local sides. They go over there, and it's not only great for a lot like the NBL, but it's great for the players and the young players coming in to potentially have these great performances, get seen on a bigger scale as well. And we see this all the time in a bunch of different sports. So it's exposure for the competition. It's also exposure for players who have been battling in this league. Will they get a chance to go higher up? They perform well there. Who knows? They could be seen in the biggest league in the NBA in a few years' time.
Yeah, I think it talks to, a lot of Aussie fans know the NBL, they know the NBA, they don't necessarily follow the Euro leagues, but it is big over there. And, we're seeing the development of the Euro, the Asian leagues, basketball is continuing to grow. So this is huge for Australia. I understand it'll be a one-off game between the two European sides at John Cain Arena in Melbourne, September 18th. So right in the middle of footy finals. So if you're coming across for a trip, probably won't, because North Melbourne aren't going to be there despite that draw against Brisbane. But and then it's up to Sydney for a couple of days for a 4-team tournament as well. So lots of top-tier basketball. That'll lead in perfectly to those NBA, NBL crossover games with the New Orleans Pelicans in October. So, mate, again, I feel like I use this line every episode, Brody. Too much sport is never enough.
Absolutely. And big names coming to our shores, it's a great thing for the sport itself. We've seen it before when Liverpool and Real Madrid, come 10 or so years ago, and that brought so many football fans. And I just love these big names coming to our shores. And there's so many fans of these big clubs that come to our shores. So it is great. And hopefully it's just leads to more and more success and more Australians playing at the highest level.
Yeah, it certainly does, and that's what we want to see. We want to see more Aussies. We've continued to grow that presence at the NBA level. It also puts the NBL on a bigger stage and a bigger showcase, which will lead to potentially investment. So great to see. Let's move on, Broads, from basketball. Let's talk some rugby union. It's not a sport we dig into all that often on the show, I think maybe once or twice before, but we're now looking at the Channel 9 have landed the broadcast rights for the next 3 World Cups, as well as some other packaged items amongst that, in a monster $200+ million deal.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I feel like when they're going well, the whole of Australia gets behind them, but not so much when obviously we've struggled in the past. So fingers crossed now that things are starting to turn a little bit in the right direction. Australia can get behind them again. Look, Channel 9, we know they've done a great job, obviously, since acquiring the tennis and a lot of other things. So to be a bit of a watch moving forward, I think, on this one, and fingers crossed. I mean, our national team does well, any sport, and the viewers will follow, mate.
Yeah, well, that is obviously a key piece. obviously a new coach coming in soon who's just going to lead to some wonderful headlines with his name, Les Kiss. If they start misperforming, it's going to be Wallabies taking the Les Kiss. I think, the rhyming slang in the headline will speak for itself. It'll be nice fun for some journos. But look, this one does include obviously the 2027 and 2029 home World Cups. It's a big deal. That's men's and women's. It also includes some sevens, the Pacific 15s. There's quite a bit here that's packaged into this one deal. World Rugby under 20s and some World 15 tournaments as well. Pacific Nations Cup, sorry, is the other one. So the World Rugby Sevens, we know that's a big deal as well and gets lots of viewers and lots of eyes. So look, Nine and Stan, their partner, have done a great job with some of the domestic rugby in recent years with the Shoot Shield and the Hospital Cup that's in Queensland, the first grade up there. So hopefully they continue to deliver. They've got some of the biggest names in rugby commentary, the likes of Sean Maloney there as well. So we look forward to seeing how that all shapes up. Mate, we like a bit of levity on this show, and I don't know if you've seen this. Popped up recently. Obviously, we know the Pope passed away over the Easter weekend. They voted in a new Pope, which seems to happen quicker than, bringing in new CEOs in sporting organisations. But some video has appeared of the Pope being a Chicago White Sox fan. He's being snapped at a Chicago White Sox game. They spotted him in the video. And I just think, look, almost, I'm not an over religious man. I'll share that openly, but this has made him a lot more relatable. He's just like all of us. He's a degenerate just going and chasing his favourite sporting team and getting that dopamine fix.
Imagine someone hurling abuse at the ref down there in baseball, and you turn around and it's a big bloke in a hat. And so it would be funny, but I saw there was actually betting odds on this earlier in the week on which sports teams the Pope would follow. So when he originally said that, I thought you were talking about Lloyd Pope, the King of Adelaide, mate. But look, it is a great thing, isn't it? No matter how high you get in the world, nothing brings people together like sport. And we've seen this before. He was some of the biggest names in the world. Ryan Reynolds as well with Wrexham coming to our shores as well later this year. And we've seen what he's done there. But look, I just love moments like this. It's like the Pope follows baseball. Yeah, mate, you've lost me for words. I don't really know where else to go from there.
How do you process that? Our number one ticket holders, this guy, our number one ticket holder is God's right man. That's hard to beat.
You reckon he's got a screen in the Pope-mobile, just streaming all the games?
Yeah, I don't know if the thing in the collection that's playing for his KO or whatever the considered equivalent is quite there. MLB too. I don't know how that'll go down in the collection plate, but anyway, look, good luck to the White Sox, and look. If they can't win with the Pope's help and divine intervention, then there's something wrong. They should be odds-on favourites for the next World Series.
You'd have to think so. I mean, they could be 4-0 down, and you'll see a bunch of curveballs come in, a couple of lightning strikes, and I'm sure it'll be completely fine. A little bit like Ned Flanders when he went bowling with the Simpsons that time. And hello, it's me, Ned.
It always comes back to the Simpsons references. And look. While we're on weird and the wonderful of sport, there's lots happening in the motorsport arena as well. So we might have to call in our reliable motorsport guru, our man on the ones and twos, JR Carter. Brody, I've made you promise that you're not going to do any drive-bys on JR today, so let's welcome in nicely.
We've had a drive-by free environment for the last few weeks. Let's keep it that way. But who didn't miss a drive-by as we finished recording last week is poor old Jack Doohan. The first time we've ever had to do a pickup shot on this show where Chris and I had spoke in length about like the potential for him to get dropped. And then literally as I sit down at my desk after we finished the recording, the news alert pops up that indeed Jack Doohan got dropped. We will have Franco Colapinto for the next 5 races. So like we're seeing some more intricacies here where we were joking around like Red Bull's going to go down their driver lineup. It sounds like Alpine actually has intention where they're planning on like Franco's going to be on a 5-race deal, and then they may replace him after 5 races. So after Silverstone, he could be out. Doohan could go back in, or another driver could go back in. Like Alpine has no idea what they are doing right now.
It surprises you that a team run by a convicted, alleged criminal doesn't know what they're doing. Who would have thought?
Like it just boggles the mind. Like we were saying this, like we did a pickup on the news about the Alpine team principal. Like they are a team in disarray right now. Like, are we starting to look at potential? Like I know we've got Cadillac coming in early, like for next season. are we going to be back to 20 teams regardless? Is that where we're going?
Rhodes, this is just a mess. They've brought in a guy who was banned from Formula One. It took an external court to overturn it, basically because it wasn't dealt with the right way by the FIA in terms of his ban. We talked last week about, the absolute, you could make a mini series out of the Flavio Briatore Wikipedia page, supermodels, multiple failed businesses, multiple attempts at school failed, plus a bunch of other stuff in there. Like, it's a weird and wonderful one, and it's like Alpine are doing their absolute best. It's like the guy at school who just doesn't want to be there, so he does his absolute best just to absolutely annoy the living daylights out of the teachers to get rid of him.
Yeah, I saw this last week as well, and felt for the young fella. And yeah, it seems nothing is worse than self-sabotage, and this is exactly what they're doing. It's clear for everyone to see. I mean, I'm not even the biggest follower, but I'm even sitting back wondering what the hell they're doing right now, and it's absolutely bizarre. And I love how you put that alleged in very much in brackets, even though it might not seem so. But look, it's a massive watch, I think, over the next 6 months for him. What happens? It just seems like there's no way of this getting better right now. It's got to really hit rock bottom before anything actually changes for the good, and it might not be far away.
Yeah, it's a case of while Gasly sort of had a couple of okay results, Franco's going to be going into an absolute dog of a car. We also need to remember, Franco had some really good races at Williams last year, but that Williams car's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. The two drivers there are scoring points right now. That Alpine is an absolute tank to drive. So he's just not going to have a fun time.
No, I just can't wait to see JR Carter in their race of the season driving the Alpine. For the right price, they are.
Look, unfortunately, I would not pass the eyesight test to get a super license. I can't get a pilot's license, so I don't think I can get an F1 license either.
Look, if Flavio can get a job back managing a team, anything can happen. The other thing I want to call out on all of this is some of the just horrific stuff, and we've touched on this at length with other sports, but the horrific intimidation and messages that went to Jack Doohan and his family. It's not okay to do it to athletes. It's definitely not okay to do it to their families. And just, if you're a viewer of our show, well, I'd rather not have you as a viewer of our show if you're one of those sorts of people. It's just, bro, this is it's 2025. Let's stop hiding behind these, fake shitty profiles and just do the right thing. Don't be a bad human.
Unfortunately, this is getting worse and worse in every single sport we see nowadays. And look, I talked to Spider about this, and he said, thank God there was no social media back in his day, because he said he's talked to a lot of AFL players as well, with this, and they said they have to physically, after a game, they have to turn off, not just obviously delete the app, but they have to completely deactivate their social media account if they know that they've mucked up in a game. If they have to completely deactivate the account, maybe reactivate it on a Thursday or a Friday when things have calmed down. Otherwise, it's not just your usual messages. It's actually really insulting, and it's actually quite scary, some of the messages that they get from these crazed fans. And a lot of them aren't even fans of the game, let's be honest. They're people who want to jump on people when they're down.
Yeah, blokes just wanting to make themselves feel better by running someone else down. I know, talking to some of the footballers, the ALeague players, they've just, feel, and they're realistically, no offense to the ALeague players, it's not one of the largest viewership sports, so you wouldn't think there'd be as much of it. But they're having to build out, hundreds of filter words into their messages, which still go into another folder that they can still see if they're silly enough to go and look in there. But again, they shouldn't have to do this. I'd love to just get an organisation, bros. Maybe you, me, and JR can get this organisation. What we do is we find out who these people are. We go to their work, we watch them, and then start sending them abusive messages about doing a shit job at their work. What do you reckon, JR? Are you in?
Look, this is a good concept. It's similar to what Jay and Silent Bob did in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. They got the list of all the people that were shitting on the internet, and they just went on a door knocking campaign. Maybe that's where this needs to go.
Rhodes, I think they'd be a lot more reticent to make their comments once if the athletes rocked up to their door, especially some of the footballers. I can imagine someone bullying Spider and then sending Spider around to their house.
Mate, he's 50, or he's over 50 now, and I still wouldn't mess with him. He's still over 200 centimetres, but he's the nicest bloke in the world at the same time. So, no, it is, in all seriousness, though, we talk about, and this is, I think, one of the biggest problems is a lot of these people who are sending these messages are the same ones reaching out and saying people need to spend, more time, and they need to consider, mental health a lot more. And then they're going out and sending these messages, which is absolutely disgusting at the same time. So as a group of fans, I don't like sort of putting myself anywhere near these people, but just as a football, as a sports public, we need to understand that these are people. They're not these people that are never going to read it. I mean, and then to start going after family members, it's just disgusting.
Better, guys, if you're involved in it, if you know people that are doing it, just talk to people. This is not acceptable. Be passionate fans by all means, but we don't need it. Brody, JR, a big thank you for chipping in around the grounds, Broads. We might take a quick breather, rehydrate, and get into the cricket nets, hey?
Sounds good.
Well, it's time to dig into another one of our sporting landscapes, and that is the cricket world. And normally this time of year, you wouldn't think there's much to talk about, but due to some political crisis and a few other bits and pieces that are coming up on the horizon, there certainly is some pieces to dig into. And again, when we talk cricket, we like to bring in a host of guests, but this week it is one of our cricket gurus in Brody Burrows. He's back after a big hard-hitting around the grounds. Broads, mate, the cricket world, it's been rocked a little bit by a big announcement from one of the Indians we love to love, but also love to hate.
Yeah, look, Virat Kohli stepping away from just Test cricket, I think, at this stage. And, I mean, what can you say about him? Every great rivalry needs a panda bomb villain. And that it sums up Virat Kohli. And I actually heard someone talk about it and said, no matter what sport he plays, you know he was going to be good at it. He's driven, but he's also willing to make himself and put himself right at the forefront, cop all the criticism of his team, which he's done time and time again. A guy you love to hate. If you're a fan of Australian cricket and you're a lover of the Australian cricket team, we've all hated Virat Kohli at some stage, let's be honest. But at the same time, we're the first ones sitting in that seat to watch him come out to bat. And I think that just sums up his career to date. He played his best in the biggest matches. Credit where credit is due. I mean, he's been an absolute star. And not just that, but he's carried that nation on his shoulders for the past 10, 12 years.
He certainly has, and look, we've seen him develop too, right? Like going back 7 or 8 years, and talking about this and Glenn Maxwell, similar, like they were combative, and he still had that edge, the competitive edge, but he sort of matured a bit. As you said, he's led really well. He's been a key part of this team, and he'll be missed. I begrudgingly respected him when he played against Australia, but at the same time, if I saw that India was playing New Zealand and it was going to be on TV, or India was playing England and we got it on Fox Sports or something like that, mate, I was getting there and I was finding reasons to be in front of the TV because. Like a couple of others, like Kane Williamson across the ditch, at their best, they are absolutely, must-watch TV there. I think one of the cricket podcasts calls them the lawnmower men. Like you're in the middle of mowing the lawn and you find out that they're coming into bat because a wicket's fallen, and you park the mower up and I'll come back to the lawn later because it's must-watch cricket.
Yeah, he's so technically gifted, I think. It's a real underrated thing about Virat Kohli. We talk about how great he is, how combative he is, but we forget about his technical prowess a lot of, and I think Kerry O'Keefe said it best. He said, when Virat Kohli hits a cover drive, I talk dirty. When Travis Head hits one, I feel dirty. And he's just a brilliant player. I mean, it's going to be a long time, I think, before we're going to get someone like a Virat Kohli back in this world who is happy to stir up the crowd. Everyone seems to be, especially with the IPL and so many leagues, all these players are best mates with each other now. It's going to be a long time before we're going to see a player like Virat Kohli who's going to come out, ruffle feathers, ruffle the fans, really get the fans involved. I mean, I was at the day-night test in Adelaide this year, and as soon as that wicket fell, he would have gone close to being in gout in the 100-metre sprint and that dash out there. He's just rocketed out there, ready. He was down at fine leg, giving the crowd grief all day. Just players you love to go to the cricket and watch.
Yeah, he certainly is one of those. And as you say, I don't think we'll see, whilst we might see players of his ability, and, people said we wouldn't see another one after Sachin Tendulkar, and then, Virat came along, and, there's some more coming through the ranks. We've seen the young 14-year-old tearing up the IPL, and you'd be a brave man to write him off. But it's going to be sad to see him go. The good news is he's still going to be playing ODI cricket for India, I understand. So, again, that'll be must watch cricket when he comes out. So we look forward to seeing still some more of Virat. We'll see him in the IPL and some other tournaments, obviously. Previously IPL because the Indians don't release them for anything else, but there'll still be some more Virat Kohli cricket to go round. Speaking of things on the horizon as opposed to Virat hanging them up ahead of their England series, Test Championship is just around the corner. It's next month, Broads. I can't wait. Australia looking to go back-to-back against the South Africans. We talked about last week, Kagiso Rabada's been cleared to play. That's great because that means South Africa is going to be close to full strength. Australia have named their squad. Nothing too outrageous or surprising here. I think if you had given me a 15-man squad to name, I would have got at least 14, if not 15 of these.
Yeah, look, I mean, there were some calls for Marcus Harris. He's been making a boatload of runs, but he's also been playing in the Division 2 over there. And yeah, I mean, if you're on an Australian contract, if you're around the Australian team, if you're around the South African team, you should be making runs in that Division B. Look, I probably would have named the 15 as well. And it's great to see Brendan Doggett being brought in as well as a travelling sub in this one, obviously off that great Sheffield Shield final performance, which is I think just goes to show that you have a couple of good Sheffield Shield games, a good Sheffield Shield season, as he did, and then all of a sudden you might not be immediately into calculations, but you're around the mark.
Yeah, I think it's good to see some of those players, getting opportunity to be around the squads. Again, very different because it's a one-off test but when we went to Sri Lanka, we saw Cooper Connolly, and look, I'm not going to bag the guy. He didn't set the world on fire, but I think it was a rapid elevation to be another debutant, but he's got an Australian test cap. He's got a baggy green, which is a lot better than 99.9% of the country, and I think it's good for these players to be around, get the experience of touring and seeing what's being delivered at that level above the Sheffield Shield, and Doggett's deserved that. As has, I think, everyone that's in that lineup has deserved it. I think there's a couple of guys there that are going to be under pressure, though, should they're not performing this, and then our next tour before we get to the Ashes. And one of the biggest names in that is Marnus Labuschagne.
Yeah, look, it's a real watch on this one. Cam Green, obviously now back fit again, but at the same time, does he open? There's a fair bit of talk about Marnus now, and he was talked about. Did he want to do that? Year and a half, 2 years ago, absolutely not. He said he'd rather stay at number 3. But if you were to ask Marnus now, would you rather open the batting or would you rather carry the drinks? I think he'd say, I've always wanted to be an opening batter, as Marnus would. But look, I just can't wait for this. I mean, South Africa 2 years ago, we were talking about how bad that they've been lately, and then now all of a sudden they're back. I mean, they're bowling some of the best in the world, but this also their batting has come such a long way in these past 12 months as well. I mean, we're just so used to, you associate South African cricket with the AB de Villiers, with the likes of even Graham Smith. Now there's so many players coming through. I think the next generation of the Graham Smith, of the AB de Villiers in that side.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think there's some real names to watch, and we've still got some of that last generation, the Rabadas and sorts of guys who are getting towards that other end of their career. But there's some names starting to come through, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think there's a lot of people that are underestimating how good the South Africans are going to be. Yes, Australia will head in as favourites, but the swinging English conditions will suit some of their paces that they're going to have in that squad. They've got some really good paces. You've only got to look at what some of them are doing in the IPL at the moment and those sorts of areas, and the Aiden Markrams of the world as well. There's some phenomenal cricketers there, and like us, they grow up playing a lot of sports from a very young age. There's a lot of similarities between the pathways that junior athletes take more broadly in South Africa and Australia, and I think underestimate them at your own peril as we head towards this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Marco Janssen's one of my favourite cricketers in the world right now. A big man like that who can hold the stick and also bowl more than handy left arm swingers. I think he'll be one to watch, and I think if South Africa win, I think he'll be the one getting the medal, the best on medal, whatever they call it. I'm not sure what it's called.
I'm not sure either. Maybe we'll help them name that. Maybe now Virat's retired, it'd be an ironic name to give it, considering he's never won a World Test Championship. But anyway, I shouldn't lay the boot into him now. Let's move on before we wrap up the cricket. The IPL and the PSL, some drama there. They were suspended last week. It's been agreed that the Indian Premier League will resume this weekend. I think the PSL went far behind it. There's been a ceasefire between India and Pakistan, and I'm not going to try and get into the politics of right, wrong, indifferent. We know that's been a hotly contested area. It's why India and Pakistan don't play bilateral cricket. They each other in tournaments, but it's obviously a talking point now because there's a lot of Australian players that are over there, both in the IPL and the PSL, that are going to have to make some decisions about what they want to do.
Yeah, very, very interesting in this one. I know Max Bryant, who's over in Pakistan, and obviously he only has data when he gets back to the motel, and he's got back, then all of a sudden his phone's pinging and everything saying, you okay? And it's such a weird one at the moment because there's so many players over there. Some players have decided just to jump on the plane and come home. And then you've got others like Pat Cummins and over there who's the captain of his side. And is he going to stay? Is it worth him staying because he's the captain of the side? But at the same time, is cricket really that important during all of this? Like, yes, we know what cricket means to the Indian government, but is this now a bit of a one-upsmanship to Pakistan, who obviously called that off? Do you reckon that comes into it, a little bit?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I'm not sure how it all plays out, really. I mean, you're trying to get into the weeds probably, but it's a perplexing situation for a lot of these players, and even more perplexing for some of the players when you look at Cummins and Travis Head, who are playing for a team that's out of playoff contention, even though they've got 3 games remaining. But then you've got other players like Mitchell Starc, who did come home with Alyssa Healy. They were both over there. They've come home since. That are, Mitchell Starc and Josh Inglis are still in contention. The IPL rescheduled final, allowing that everything goes smoothly now, is June the 3rd, if I'm not mistaken, under the new schedule. The World Test Championship starts on, halfway around the world on June the 11th. That gives them, allow that they leave straight after the match and don't celebrate if they were to take part in that. That gives them basically a week more time to get there for the day before. Like, that's not a lot of time to work with. And I know these cricketers, jet around the world and deal with, jet lag and all these sorts of things. But this is the showpiece event every 2 years on the Test cricketing calendar. We still say that red ball cricket is the showpiece of cricket. There's got to be some questions asked here. And, again, I'll back the players to make the right decisions around what's right for them, as they usually do. But it's an interesting and perplexing one if you're those players. And, again, I touch on Pat Cummins. It might be easy for us to say walk away. But as you say, he's the captain of that franchise. Times are tough and, there's some uncertainty. Should he be there for his players as well? Like, there's a lot to unpack.
Oh, absolutely. And look, one thing that we do have to think about that too is massive difference between white ball cricket, red ball cricket. Obviously, overspent your body. Is that 1 week going to be enough to really just reset and go back into test cricket mode, which we've seen has been a struggle. I mean, look at the Sheffield Shield scores coming out of the Big Bash. I think we saw a couple of real low scores, and then all of a sudden we had a couple of roads stitched up, and there was 500-600s getting put back on the park again. So, look, I think it's going to be one of those things. If we come in anything other than full strength, look out. I think South Africa might even take us.
Yeah, I guess to that point, South Africa will have a few players in the same boat. It's also an interesting one, obviously a little bit closer for them if they've gone home and then to go to England. But we'll wait and see how it plays out. As I said, there's lots here. Pakistan Super League, Warren's over there. He was talking that once they confirm a resumption date, he will quickly head back. But there's other players that are in the decision making stage, and then you've got other players again who will have decisions to make, because if some international players leave, then that will open up spots for Indian players. And I'm not sure how that will work, whether they'll create exemptions for players to come in late. We know Mitch Owen was supposed to go from the PSL to the IPL for the finish of the season. Some of these sorts of guys who aren't in test squads or aren't, it might be an opportunity for them to make some money if some other players pull out, or just to get their name up in lights through the IPL finals. And maybe we'll see a situation where a fringe player might go and all of a sudden play in the IPL semi-final and final and do what Mitch Owen did in the big. We know he did that for a prolonged period there, but imagine that. Imagine Mitch Owen jets over there and all of a sudden gets man of the match and kills off dominates the Big Bash as well. So, the IPL as well. That'd be some story in a season.
Yeah, look, what a Big Bash season he had, just number one. I'm still getting over that finish as well. But Xavier Bartlett, I think, goes right into that category as well. Obviously, we've seen what he's done, and he hasn't really been in his side much this year. But if those players are to leave, he's someone who could come in and automatically, triple his what he got bought for this year, because we know how good he's been when he has played for Australia in any kind of white ball cricket. So he'd be one who I think fits that category perfectly.
Yeah, I think with some of the moves, we could see some interesting ones. I might have to check in with Jason Sanger. I mean, we talk about Mitch Owen, because Mitch Owen was the man that stopped him getting a treble this year. Basically, he won the One Day Cup and the Sheffield Shield, and almost if it wasn't for Mitch Owen, Sydney Thunder probably wins that Big Bash final, right? So Jason Sanger would have had a treble. He's now left and gone to the Strikers, and there's some of those players around though. If they're ready to go, that maybe they get it for a couple of games, and it'd be wonderful to see if that happens. Again, the main thing we hope for is that everyone manages to remain safe, make the decisions that are best for themselves, and hopefully we still get lots of cricket happening and they can resume in a safe and sustainable manner. But we'll wait and see what happens. Brody Burrows, as always, if people want to get a bit more of your opinions and thought around AFL, some cricket and some other bits and pieces in between with the great Spider Everett, it is the Third Man Up podcast. That's where to find you on all the best podcast platforms.
Yep, that's the one, mate.
Well, it's now time to move on to the round ball action. And as we do more often than not, Mr. Consistent, he's back after battling illness and all sorts of life-threatening conditions. Lachie Avil from Round Ball Australia back on deck and looking a little bit healthier than you might have been the last couple of weeks, mate. Thank you for soldiering to this point.
Yes, thanks, Chris. Feeling a lot better as well. Keen to hopefully get through a full football segment today.
Look, hats off to Harry. He did a great job deputising last week, and we're lucky to have someone like him waiting in the wings. But it's great to have you back on deck in resplendent in your Round Ball Australia colours too, mate. The kit's looking magnificent. Wonderful to see. But let's talk about some big-ticket football item to start with. The Europa League and the Champions League, the finals have been decided for Europe's two biggest club trophies, many would argue. One of them is going to be an all-England final, which is interesting. The other certainly will not.
No, the Europa League, obviously the big ticket item. Not quite sure what happened in the other competition. We've got Ange Postecoglou. Obviously, the Australian angle is really, really cool, right? He's going into a European final. Will be the first Australian manager to do so. The other really cool link of history in here is that he's coming up against Manchester United, which is a club that has been consistently intertwined with his career as a manager. He first faced them in 2000 as South Melbourne head coach, playing in the FIFA Club World Cup, the inaugural Club World Cup. That was his first match against any European opposition. Then only just a couple of years ago, Man United was also his first win in the Premier League as Tottenham head coach. And now he gets to face off against them again in a European final, and obviously would become the first Australian manager to win a continental trophy. So there's a lot of history on the line, and I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, the irony that Spurs and Manchester United are sitting 16th and 17th in the Premier League as well is getting quite a bit of joy out of the rest of the footballing community. But it's going to be a very historic day either way it goes.
Yeah, it's certainly an exciting matchup for lots of reasons. Exciting for me as a Man City fan because I can really go chips in on Aussie angle here and get behind Aussie Ange and Tottenham and hope that they add some more misery to what's been a tough season for Manchester United. But I guess from that point of view, it's been a tough season for both these teams by their standard measures in the league. So nice for a little bit of silver lining for one of the sides, but for both the sides to be getting to a final. I know Manchester United, not going back that long, this would be considered a dismal failure, but where they are at the moment, it's probably a good little result to whoever can take the trophy.
Yeah, and it's the interesting comparison between the short-term and the long-term histories of these two football clubs. Manchester United are in this competition not because they finished 5th or 6th last season, but because they won the FA Cup last season. They didn't even qualify for Europe through the Premier League. So they won the FA Cup into the Europa League and then potential to qualify for the Champions League as well, which is hilarious. And, Ruben, the head coach, is being, very open about the fact that winning the Europa League wouldn't, instantly turn this Manchester United season into a success. Whereas you look at Tottenham, a club that hasn't won a major trophy in 17 years, and it's been a long time between drinks, and all of a sudden finishing 17th in the Premier League, yes, obviously is quite average, but never really a serious threat of relegation. For them to win a trophy, and a European trophy at that would mark a new era for that football club, and maybe just save Ange's job as well. So there's a completely different context. I think a lot of neutral supporters hope that both teams lose this game, but definitely in this part of the world, we're hoping that Big Ange can get it done.
Yeah, we certainly are. Lots of people behind it know that Manchester United have a strong fan base down under as well. So there'll be an interesting dichotomy for some of those. But there is another. I don't think there's any teams that you probably should really quickly touch on it.
Yeah, look, Inter Milan against PSG in the final of the Champions League. I think the funny story out of this is, of all the seasons that PSG have looked, like they're going to challenge in the Champions League, this year would be the most tolerable win for them, for the majority of football supporters, because it isn't, the Galactico approaches. It isn't, having Neymar, Mbappe and Messi in the side. It's obviously there's a lot of quality players in there, but they've gone a little bit, I'll classify myself there, a little bit more back towards what a traditional football club should be, promoting youth from the academy, making intelligent purchases, not just throwing the money out and getting the best players in the world without too much of a thought on how all the puzzle pieces fit together. And they've got a coach in Luis Enrique who is, he holds a lot of respect in global football. He seems like a very nice human being, and I think a lot of people respect what he's been doing over there. And so if PSG were to win the Champions League final finally, I think this would be the most tolerable, I think is the right word, as I said, year for them to do it. And on the other side, Inter Milan, who for you and I, it would be hilarious if they won, because then we get to make fun of Christian Monzkin, who's a very passionate AC Milan supporter. So I know which team I'm rooting to win. It also makes Arsenal, actually, no, it doesn't really. I don't really care who wins, but I'm still devastated that Arsenal didn't make it. But that's football.
Just for a bit of giggles, I think the interesting thing, obviously, it's been Spanish, English, and a little bit of German dominated in recent years. Champions League, if my memory serves, in terms of the list of winners. So 15 and 22 years are the droughts, I think, for Italy and France, respectively, if they are to win the Champions League. So, again, always looking for a little statistical story in there. That might be the nice piece there. And, look, if it's not Arsenal or Man City for you and I, well, I don't want them to see another English team win, but I'm not too bothered from the little bit of Schadenfreude that we'll be able to dish on Christian, as you say.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is important that these other countries continue to win Champions Leagues as well, because there's a lot of conversation in football, of course. We think of the Super League, the efforts of some of these big clubs to get that off the ground. It's important that the concentration of English football success doesn't get too strong. And obviously in a knockout competition like the Champions League, it's hard to consistently win those kind of tournaments. But we've seen all the money go into English football and the spending power of even the bottom Premier League clubs have relative to some of the top clubs in other leagues around Europe. I think it's important that we see a lot of diversity in the winners list in the Champions League to continue to have the prestige of that competition.
Agreed. Well, while we're speaking about diversity in countries, next topic, and it's a winning combination of the football powerhouse that is Wales and Hollywood coming to Australia.
Yeah, AFC Wrexham, obviously a very famous club now in world football. And obviously this has come off the back of Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds' investment into the football club and the documentary that's gone around the world on Disney+. Australia, of which is the third highest watcher of that documentary on Disney. So you can understand why Australia and New Zealand would be such a, interesting place for them to want to come to travel, and a profitable place as well. They're going to be taking on Melbourne Victory, Sydney FC and Wellington Phoenix. So it is across the two countries of the A-League teams over, I think it's about a week and a half in July. So God knows what kind of A-League teams we're going to be putting out that, early into our preseason with such a long amount of time before our first game in the season. It's not quite the same for Wrexham, so they might actually legitimately be trying to get a little bit of form. Obviously, it's a promotional tour, but their season starts a lot earlier than what ours does. So hopefully we get some big names that, as much as you can be from a National League side a couple of years ago. But yeah, they've not just done it on the screen, they've done it on the football pitch now for 3 consecutive years, going back to back to back promotions all the way up into the championship. So they're a legitimate football club now, and the rise on the pitch has been incredible, and we get a little bit of taste of that in Australia.
Certainly do. I think they missed a trick. They could have gone with the Welcome to Down Under and done subsequent season or a few episodes around this. I was surprised because obviously, Melbourne Victory and Sydney FC are two of the blue ribbon clubs, pardon the pun on their colours. I really thought they might have, going to New Zealand, it might have been Auckland FC and Bill Foley tying in this time around, but hats off to Wellington. And as you say, this Wrexham team is going to be a month or so out from the start of their season. The A-League teams are going to be 3 months out from the start of their season, and, Australia Cup commitments and other things that are going to be starting to be popping up on their radar a little bit down the track from that. So I'm expecting a bit more Australia Cup-ish squads than maybe A-League squads, but it's going to be a great opportunity for a number of Aussie players and Aussie contractor players to play against a championship side, as you said. So we'll wait and see. Some news that's not as positive, Lachie. Football Australia, we saw in the last week that James Johnson has departed. Heather Garriock has been appointed as the interim CEO. And on his way out the door, he signed off on the financial statements that showed a $950 million loss, was it? Is that the number that I saw? That can't be right.
No, not $950 million, about $8 million.
$8.5 million. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong document there. $8.5 million. I've nearly given you $8.5 million in losses, which is still a very substantial amount. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's a significant loss. You're right. Obviously, these numbers always have to be considered in context. That's a $8 million loss against record revenues of 120 million. So it's not like Football Australia is in any dire financial situation. They're earning a lot of money off the national teams at the moment, and a lot of these expenses, I think about 4 million of that is writing off debts that it doesn't, so bad debts that they don't expect to recoup. Some of that is from the A-Leagues as well. So they're obviously doing the APL a little bit of a solid there. So look, I think some people have interpreted this just because the news came out so quickly after James Johnson's departure that he was kind of trying to disassociate himself from these figures. I don't think that's true at all, to be perfectly honest. I think this is just part of running a business, especially in the sport entertainment world. You're going to lose money a fair bit of the time. But look, it is what it is. This is a fluid situation. I think the biggest story is James Johnson leaving as CEO of Football Australia. I think personally he's done a lot of good things. He's had to manage the disassociation of the APL from Football Australia. He brought the 2023 Women's World Cup to Australian shores. He's negotiated broadcast deals. He had to get the code through COVID, which was an incredibly difficult time as well. So he's had a lot to do, and I personally believe he's done a pretty good job. But the next appointment for Football Australia becomes very crucial now, because we're in a stage where collaboration between all of football's stakeholders is gotten a lot better, and we're starting to pitch to government and things like that in a much better way. So we really need a strong leader for our game that, in a very competitive sporting landscape, as you like to say, in Australia, with obviously the likes of the big codes of the AFL and the NRL as well. We need someone who's going to be a strong leader and fight for our fair share. So I think that's very important for this next appointment.
Yeah, I think to that point, James Johnson definitely gets some big green ticks from me overall. As you said, the Women's World Cup, he's managed to secure the Women's Asian Cup that's coming to us as well. He's done a wonderful job through COVID. The timing, as you say, not ideal, and people want to lean on the coincidental nature of it. I don't think, realistically, if it was that number that I said before, then maybe that would have been the story. But, again, even at a normalised loss, I think the challenge for Football Australia is if that normalised loss becomes a consistent ongoing piece for years to come, then, you can't be bleeding out what a normalised loss of $4 million after those loans that are write-offs. You can't be sacrificing that year on year. So you need to start to balance returns of your revenue and actually, breaking even a couple of years. We know, as you said, sport's not exactly a money spinner. And, if they started sitting with money in the bank, people would start accusing them of not doing their job anyway. So if they didn't spend the money, they get in trouble. So it's a fine line. But I think James Johnson will be missed.
Yeah, just to jump on some of the other reasons for that loss as well. FA, they spent around $11-12 million purchasing broadcast rights from the AFC for, I think it's the FIFA Women's World Cup, and then they used that to package as part of their broadcast deal that they were selling on. So you have that. It's also a year where Football Australia haven't really participated in any major tournaments offer prize money. So you think of the Men's and Women's World Cup. They kind of operate on that 4-year cycle of expecting different revenues. It's a very important topic in rugby, as you know, as well, because when the World Cup comes around, there's different levels in prize money. So you're expecting certain years to get certain profit and losses margins. So yeah, I don't think it's a worry for Football Australia at all.
Not in the short term, though. I think that 4-year window is a very good point. Let's turn our attention now to the A-Leagues. They're getting to the pointy part of the season, and Melbourne City were flying high, soaring on all sorts in the dub, and then the Central Coast Mariners. And look, there's some controversies maybe in this game, might be a light way of putting it. I think rather than actually shedding light on issues with the game itself, it sheds light on issues with the league more broadly, and the lack of funding for more cameras so we can have VAR and different things in a women's competition, and probably again highlights the discrepancy in funding between men's and women's football. But hey, at the end of the day, just ask Newcastle Jets about that grand final against the Melbourne Victory, whether when the VAR doesn't work or doesn't exist.
Yeah. Look, you can tell me how deep you want me to go into this, Chris, because there is a lot of complex factors at play here. Small. We're going small on this. No, look, VAR doesn't exist in A-League Women's at the moment, nor should it, for a variety of reasons. There are many more important places where they should be spending money before we start talking about VAR. However, that is a completely separate issue to the fact that there was a complete and utter, I'm trying to think of a polite way to say this, incorrect decision that destroyed not only Melbourne City's chance of reaching a grand final, but going through their invincible season and for a treble, a continental treble as well. So this is one call, Isabel Gomez scored the winner in the 121st minute of the second leg of the semi-final for the Central Coast Mariners against a 10-player Melbourne City side who'd held out for so long down a player. Isabel Gomez clearly offside at least a metre on the angle that we can see on the broadcast, and it's just a miss from the referee, and they have no VAR to overturn that decision. Both coaches knew it was offside post-game as well. This isn't something that's up for debate. She was offside. This wasn't a goal. But the Central Coast Mariners are going through to the final. That's just kind of the matter-of-fact nature about it.
Well, I happen to see some of the Mariners team and their media manager will make peace at the airport on Monday morning. And look, they were very up and about. They were heading back to the Central Coast for a few days before they come back to Melbourne, which is the epicenter of Australian football at the moment. And I know you'll try and tell me it's always the epicenter of Australian football, but
oh yeah,
might not give you a middle finger on YouTube. So again, well done to the Mariners. At the end of the day, you can only play what's in front of you and deal with the whistle and all those sorts of things. That's what it is. And good luck to. We'll get to the grand final in a moment in terms of how that shapes up. And I guess Melbourne Victory, the winner of the other semi-final, which has been sort of overshadowed because it was a bit more straightforward, might be the nice way of putting it, Lachie.
Yeah, it was. And, Victory, to be honest, probably counting their blessings, because all of a sudden you've gone from, yes, the grand final would have been in Melbourne anyway. So you would have had a Melbourne derby, but just the size of the fight that Melbourne City would have presented in that grand final is significantly higher than the Mariners. And don't get me wrong, they've had a really great season as well, and a really great 2 years under Emily Husband since coming back into the league after 15 years away. But it's just the stature of this Matriciani side for Melbourne City is immense. So all of a sudden, you're not only still playing the game at home, but then the away team has to travel. You are the home side. You've got pretty much everything working in your favour. And, just to reiterate, this Melbourne City side have only lost one game all season. So the easiest way to get past them is to not have to play them at all. And Central Coast Mariners have done them that favour. So, yeah, they're going to be feeling pretty good, I think, about their chances heading into Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, we'll have a look ahead in a moment. But while we're on the recaps, let's talk men's finals as well. And week one of the men's finals are in the books. And, depending on who you are, again, everything came up, what's that line out of Simpsons? Everything's coming up Millhouse. Everything's coming up Melbourne.
Yeah, everything is coming up Melbourne. This final series presents a really fascinating conundrum. Obviously, Melbourne Victory with their upset win, I think, over the Western Sydney Wanderers on the weekend, and Western doing, I think, what most people expected and beating Adelaide United, although it obviously was just a one-goal game. Because we have now these three Victorian sides in the finals, as you can see on the screen, all of those three teams, their hosting rights will lead them back to Amy Park. Western United can't play another Melbourne team out at Tarneet, and if they get the grand final, it won't be allowed to play there either. So if they with a team with hosting privileges. So you look at Auckland and Victory, and Victory came into the finals series as the fifth ranked team. All of a sudden, they're playing Auckland in the semi-final tie, also playing for what is essentially a home ground advantage in the grand final, because if they get through, they're playing either City or Western, so it's at Amy Park, and their support is going to vastly outnumber either of those two teams on grand final day. So, yeah, both Melbourne Victory sides probably have got the luck of the draw throughout this final series. However, Auckland remains a very, very stern test, and we'll preview those in a second. But it was some really fun games, to be honest, in these elimination finals. Adelaide score first out at Iron Barkfield, so all of a sudden that threw up a little bit of a spanner in the works. We always knew that was probably going to be a high-scoring game, and Melbourne Victory turning out potentially one of their most professional and best performances of the season, in my opinion. I think Arthur Dillis, he's really come a long way since he came in the job and set them up well and really won the tactical battle against Alan Stajic. And it led to a really fascinating contest to which Daniel Arzani shone through and created both goals to give them the lead. Of course, I can't talk about Arzani without mentioning that Noah Botic scored a hat-trick in the other game as well. So two very good individual performances to complement their team and sending the two Victorian sides through to the semi-finals.
Unfortunately, the A-Leagues have robbed Noah Botic of a hat-trick after I wrapped him profusely last week. And the first goal was an own goal from Brenz. So, but yeah, I talked him up last week. I said, I think Noah Botic's going to be the difference here. And look, are the difference. So I'm going to claim it because, it's a bit of, monkeys in a room with typewriters. Eventually one of them will get a sentence. I need to claim my victories when I get them, Lachie.
Yes, absolutely. I actually didn't know they took it away from him. That's very unfortunate. It's funny. All of those goals had like at least 2 or 3 deflections off Adelaide United players at somewhere in the build-up. It was a bit chaotic, but Bodic just finishing. It was just pinpoint when he needed to be.
Continuing to get better and better as time goes along, and he's a dangerous threat. But it's interesting, just really quickly on the own goals thing. Sometimes the differentiation between what's an own and what's not, like I'm not sure. Like I'd love to ask, is there a block? I think there is because of the nature of football, but yeah, that one of those 3 wasn't, and was an own goal, and 2 weren't. Yeah. Anyway, well done to Noel Boddick. That's the underlying message here. He's a key part of what United. Interesting, you talk about that. And let's transition on to looking ahead to these double leg semi-finals. As you said, Western United will host Melbourne City at Amy Park. Look, it's probably better than if Western United are the hosting team against a Melbourne Victory side in terms of balance of the home ground being the other team's home ground as well, because we know that Melbourne City and Western United don't have probably the same volume of fan base traditionally drawing as Melbourne Victory do, but still a tough one. But that's the circumstances of where the club's put itself with the facility it ended up building there in Tarneit.
Yeah. I mean, build your stadium and you get to host some games out there. That's kind of the bottom line. Get on with it. They can't host. Honestly, it's a little bit of a disgrace. I think that they played a finals game out there as well. They only got 3,000. I think that's probably being generous on the official count as well. It's just not a finals football venue. It is a training facility, right? Everyone knows it. They know it as well. It's just biding their time until the stadium gets built. So, look, we talked about the new ownership. Hopefully that gets things ticking along, and it's a matter of months before they break ground. And look, we're probably 2 more seasons still, at least 1.5 with playing games out at Tarneit, but that's the situation we find ourselves in. So, yeah, it kind of makes a bit of a mockery of this whole 2-legged final thing because they're just going to go back to Amy Park next week. So what's the real point? Maybe we should just cancel the second leg and play one. Might make things a little bit easier. But obviously on the flip side, you look at Victory in Auckland, they're going to be 2 really, really cool occasions. Obviously, the Victory fans will be up and about. They get their home final to show what they can do. And then Auckland, that's going to be a really, really special day next week.
Yeah, well, even this week, it's Auckland. We've got to remember this is Auckland's first semi-final game because they obviously stand by Melbourne. I think you'll see a lot of Auckland fans. So I've heard some interesting pieces around it. I did hear an interesting suggestion on the Melbourne United game, and they suggested they just play it one day for 180 minutes.
Yeah, look, I mean, I have my own feelings on the 2-legged system. I think we need to get rid of it. I don't think it's a good thing to do for an A-League final series long term, but you probably need more than 6 teams to make that work. So maybe when we finally get Canberra in, we could move to like a play-in for a 7th spot to kind of add an extra week to finals. Then you could probably line it up with the Dub Grand Final and you play the Australia Cup playoffs in that first weekend as well. So there's still some football, and then you get 3 actual weeks after that of back-to-back high-stakes football. Because at the moment we only have 2, right? We have the elimination final. I should say 3. We have the elimination final, the second leg of the semi-final, and then the grand final itself. That first leg, it is what it is, right? No one's going home packing from their season after that. So at least, have a play-in and just have 1 leggers. Everything means something. The game's going to be decided in 90 or 120 minutes, and then we can get on with it. Because I don't think the atmosphere and the vibe around these first legs is that much fun.
Yeah, I think there's an element here to, we've tried to grab something from European football and insert it into something that's not European football, because they obviously play that in their, the Champions League style pieces and those sorts of bits. Maybe the Australia Cup's more the home for that in some of the semi-finals and quarterfinals. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is, or maybe there's no home. But yeah, look, I'm really looking forward to these semi-finals. I'm looking forward to, as I said, the fact that it is Auckland's first semi-final, and then as you say, week 2 is going to be quite big. It'd be interesting to see the storylines coming out of week 1 into week 2. That's probably the only piece I like about the 2-legged, is that you get a bit of a, like we did, taking that, that opportunity that they weren't behind, essentially going, also was a little bit alive. But you can also then have, the counter of a team gets a 3-0 lead and you're heading to week 2 and it's kind of anticlimactic. But it's a bit of a jumble.
Yeah, and I think with the competition like the Champions League, even in Asia, right, because of the prestige of the tournament, I think fans deserve the opportunity to see their team play at home when you get into that stage of the tournament, and it creates competitive balance. But when we go into the A-League, it is, it's the final series, but it is just the A-League. And we've seen our teams play all season. and the teams above have earned the right to host these games. It's not like we're just drawing them out of a hat, right? So the competitive balance isn't necessary as well. So look, if you win the elimination final, if you host the elimination final, then that's your game you get to host in the final series. And then you win, you go to the next one, and then someone else gets to host. So, I just don't think it's necessary.
I agree with that logic. Before we move on from this and talk the women's grand final, I do just want to give you one little bit of pessimism that I got through the week from social media. Talking about Western United, their new owners, you talked about turning ground. Someone suggested to me that maybe promotion and relegation will be right in time for Western United's new ground to be open so that they can play in the B League with their new venue that's better than what they played in the A League with. And I said, look, that would be A-League, peak A-League, right? If something like that was to happen, obviously promotion and relegation I think is a fair way off, but that would be quite humorous if early in the days of them having a fully fledged stadium, they then went down a tier.
Yeah, that would be funny. I think promotion, just to go into the weeds here, I think promotion is closer than relegation, if that makes sense. We're likely to see a few more teams come up from the Australian Championship rather than go down from the A-League due to things like licensing and stuff like that. So Western and the WMG, the Western Melbourne Group, they have their right to play in the A-League for I think another 6 or 7 years. So they won't be going down, but just build the stadium. Like, come on, guys, just build the stadium. We all want to see it. They're going to be set up as one of the best clubs in the league when they do have it. So it can't come soon enough.
Yeah, agreed. Get on with it, guys. Let's go now. Let's move forward. Let's break some ground. Lachie will get out there on a shovel if you need some help. We'll send the whole Round Ball Australia Melbourne crew out to help.
Only if they got the appropriate funds to reimburse us. Hopefully they do now.
The big tickets that they need for Christian Monaghan to get him out there. All right, let's go. Speaking of big tickets, it is the biggest ticket in women's football. It is the Ninja A-League Grand Final, and it is the third day of football at Amy Park this weekend. Maybe just go and camp out for the weekend. It's going to be a great weekend in Melbourne for Australian football. And it is, as you said, Melbourne victory up against the Central Coast Mariners. We thought all roads pointed to a Melbourne derby. Everything during the regular season told us that's where it was going to be. The Mariners had other ideas, as did maybe some other people. We're not sure. We know what happened in the game. We talked about that earlier. But the Melbourne are going to go into this as overwhelming favourites. Central Coast, though, have had a wonderful time playing spoilers so far this season.
Yeah, I'm split as to whether it's as overwhelming as one might think. Obviously, the latter speaks for itself in terms of the separation between these two sides, but Central Coast Mariners have just come off beating the team that no one else beat in the regular season. And we consistently say in Australian football, it's not really about how you play in October and November. Yes, obviously Melbourne City held that all the way through, but when it gets to finals in April and May, that's when it seriously counts. And the Mariners have beaten Melbourne City, and you don't need to keep that kind of form up for 16 to 20 weeks. You only need to keep it up for one. And they're going to go to Melbourne full of confidence. And yes, obviously Victory had a quite resounding victory over Adelaide United in the semi-finals as well. They're going to have just as much confidence. So I think this is going to lead to a really entertaining game. Both teams will go out there and feel like almost like they have nothing to lose, right? Because they'll probably both going into the final series thinking, how the hell are we going to get past Melbourne City? But all of a sudden that obstacle isn't there anymore. So they just got a free tilt to just go at it and try and win an A-League Women's Championship. And look, Melbourne Victory, they've been obviously consistently pretty good in this competition as well. And the Mariners might just be timing their run perfectly.
Well, that's the interesting thing. These two sides have clashed twice in 2025 already. They clashed in February. They clashed in April. And as a Central Coast fan, friend of mine said to me, it was 2-0 the first time we played in February. In April, it was 1-0. That tells me we're going to 90 minutes, going past 90 minutes, and Central Coast are going to get the job done. I like the optimism. It'd be a wonderful story, right? Because, we're at the 16 finals era now, and only recently into it in the A-League. So for a team to have come from outside the top two and get it done, we saw last year the teams outside the top four got the wins in the first week in the Mariners and the Jets. So this would be the full evolution then of that happening. But look, if I had to put my money, my hard earned or not so hard earned, depend on who you talk to in regards of I'd be leaning towards Victory. But yeah, it's certainly not something that, if someone rang me on Sunday night and I hadn't watched the game and said Mariners are the champions, I wouldn't be blown away, because they've been grinding in games and they've shown an ability over 90 minutes to mix it with the best a number of times.
Yeah, I think you definitely have to lean that way. And you look at the experience of the two coaches as well as another storyline. between Jeff Hopkins, his time at the Brisbane Roar and Melbourne Victory. I think on this weekend, after he participates in that game, he'll be involved in something like 40% of the A-League Women's Grand Finals in the existence of the competition, which is a crazy statistic. He's been there and done it plenty of times before. But on the other side, you have someone like Emily Husband, who has just been such an impressive coach for her full 2 years in the league now, coaching the Mariners. And you can't underestimate her ability to make little tweaks in the middle of games that just tips the balance over in her favour. So it really is, especially on the coaching side of thing, a bit of a David and Goliath story. But I think David's got a few tricks.
Yeah, it's going to be a cracker. I know that much, and it seals out a wonderful weekend. I'm glad it's able to get a standalone day away from the men's semi-finals. It's not a clash. So, as I said, Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, all at Amy Park. All roads lead to Amy Park almost literally this weekend for Australian football. So it's going to be huge, and we look forward to seeing who comes out the other side. Good luck to both teams involved, and look forward to breaking it all down with you next week, Lachie. Again, if people want more detail, not just on the A-League, but on lots of football stories that are continuing to develop across multiple episodes each week, Round Ball Australia in podcast feeds or roundballaustralia.com on the website, and check it all out.
Yeah, absolutely. Just posted our 200th episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast as well. So milestone day for us. Pretty cool.
Feel dragging the chain with 31. But Mr. Consistent, thanks as always, and look forward to talking to you next week.
Cheers, mate. See you later.
Well, another big show. Make sure to let us know what you thought in the comments. Let us know what else you'd like to see us covering, and get involved on our social media. You can find us at the Chris Mack Show on most of your major social media platforms. Don't forget to subscribe, share the show with a friend as well. And a big thank you, of course, to returning co-host JR Carter, our producer and motorsport guru, Lachie Avil from Round Ball Australia, and Brody Burrows from the Third Man Up. But until next week, enjoy your sporting landscape. We look forward to talking the black and white of sports. No in 7 days.